I loved him most on Fridays. That's what makes this harder to say. Friday evenings, when Michael would come through the door smelling like printer ink and coffee, his shoulders curved forward from hours at the desk, his smile tired but real. He'd drop his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, the blue one we bought in Portugal, and he'd find me in the kitchen. And for a moment, just a moment, everything felt like it was supposed to, like we'd built something that would last. The receipt started as my idea. February, maybe early March. I'd been trying to get us back on track financially after the holidays, setting up spreadsheets, organizing our expenses by category. Michael traveled for work sometimes, entertained clients, stayed late for proposals. The company reimbursed him, but the money took weeks to process, and our account would dip and rise like a tide I couldn't predict. So I asked him to save everything. Every receipt, every proof of purchase. He'd empty his pockets onto the dresser each night, and I'd collect them in the morning, smoothing the crumpled paper, entering numbers into neat columns. I didn't know then that I was building evidence against him. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. Our house smelled like lavender in those months. I'd started using a new detergent, something softer than what we'd used before. The scent clung to the sheets, the towels, Michael's work shirts hanging in the closet. When I folded laundry on Sunday afternoons, the warmth of the dryer would release that smell into the air, and I'd think about how these were the textures of our life together: cotton and lavender, and the sound of fabric settling into creases. Ordinary, comfortable. Michael worked in consulting, corporate restructuring, contract negotiations, the kind of work that required late nights and careful attention. He'd been with the firm for 6 years. I'd met some of his colleagues at the holiday party, men in slim-fit suits, women with sharp blazers and sharper laughs. They all seemed to exist in the same rhythm: early mornings, late evenings, phones always glowing in their pockets. It was the life he'd chosen, the life we'd agreed to build around. I was a teacher, 4th grade. My days ended at 3:30, and by the time Michael came home, I'd already graded papers, prepped tomorrow's math lesson, made dinner, or ordered takeout. We had a routine. Monday through Thursday, he'd text me around 6. Running behind, order without me. I'd eat alone, save him a plate, fall asleep with a book open on my chest. He'd slip into bed sometime after 11, and I'd feel the mattress shift, his hand finding my shoulder in the dark. Fridays were different. Fridays, he always made it home by 7. We'd eat together, talk about the week, watch something mindless on television. It was the one night I could count on, the one night that felt like ours. By April, I had 3 months of receipts organized in a small accordion folder. Gas stations, coffee shops, the deli near his office. Most of it made sense. I'd enter the amounts, categorize them, move on. But I started noticing patterns the way you notice a word repeated too many times in a paragraph. It pulls your attention, makes you read it again, to be sure. Lombardi's, a restaurant. Italian, I assumed, though I'd never been. The receipt was always the same: $87.40. Tax included, no tip line filled in. He must have left cash. The timestamp never varied by more than a few minutes. 8:47 p.m., 8:51 p.m., 8:49 p.m. Every Friday, for 11 weeks straight. At first, I didn't think much of it. Client dinners happened. Maybe Lombardi's was close to a particular client's office. Maybe it was a standing meeting, some weekly check-in that required food and small talk. I almost asked him about it one Sunday morning, the receipt in my hand, but he was scrambling eggs, humming under his breath, and the moment felt too light to disturb. I put the receipt back in the folder. But the next Friday, when Michael came home at 7, I watched him differently. He kissed my forehead, asked about my day, poured himself a glass of water. He didn't smell like garlic or wine. He smelled like soap and faint cologne, the kind he wore every day. His shirt was clean, no stains, no wrinkles from sitting too long in a restaurant booth. He looked like a man who'd been at his desk, not a man who'd just finished an $87 meal. "How was work?" I asked. "Long," he said. "Budgets are killing me. I think I aged 10 years today." "You get anything to eat?" He shook his head. "Grabbed a protein bar around 4. I'm starving." I nodded. I smiled. I set the table. The receipt from that night appeared on the dresser Saturday morning. Lombardi's, $87.40, 8:46 p.m. Some lies you don't hear. You feel them. They settle into your chest like cold air, and suddenly you're aware of the weight of your own breathing. I didn't confront him. Not then, not yet. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe he'd forgotten. Maybe he'd eaten early, felt hungry again later, stopped somewhere on the way home. Maybe I was wrong about the time he'd walked through the door. But I started paying attention. The next Friday, I texted him at 7:30. "Almost home," he replied within seconds. "Just wrapping up. 20 mins." He walked in at 8:10. I'd been standing by the window, watching the street. I saw his car pull into the driveway, saw him sit there for a moment before turning off the engine. When he came inside, his tie was loosened, his hair slightly mussed, and he smiled at me the way he always did. Warm, a little weary, like he was glad to be home. "Sorry, babe, lost track of time." "It's okay," I said. On Sunday, the receipt appeared, Lombardi's, 8740 days. 8:52 p.m. This time, I did the math. Our house was 30 minutes from his office, maybe 35 in traffic. If he left work at 7:30, if he texted me from the office like I'd always assumed, he couldn't have been at a restaurant at 9, unless he'd never been at the office at all. I opened my laptop, searched for Lombardi's, found 3 locations in the city. One was near his office. One was downtown, close to the courthouse. The third was across town, in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, near a park I'd never visited. I didn't know which one he'd been to, but I knew it wasn't the one near his office, because that one closed at 8. You don't unravel all at once. You unravel in stages. First, you doubt yourself. You think, I'm overreacting, I'm paranoid, there's an explanation I'm not seeing. Then, slowly, you start looking for proof that you're wrong. You want to be wrong. You need to be wrong. I checked his phone one night while he showered. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. His passcode was our anniversary. He'd never changed it. I opened his texts, scrolled through names I recognized. His brother, his boss, a group chat with college friends. Nothing unusual, nothing hidden. I checked his call log. Work calls, mostly. A few to me. One to his mother, everything normal. I put the phone back on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the water run in the bathroom. Steam was curling out from under the door. The lavender scent from the sheets felt suddenly suffocating. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was inventing a problem because I was bored, or because teaching 10-year-olds all day had made me suspicious of everyone. Maybe I needed to let this go. But the receipts kept coming, Lombardi's, every Friday, same total, same time, and Michael kept coming home at 7, kept telling me he'd worked late, kept kissing my forehead and asking what I'd made for dinner. By June, I'd stopped entering the receipts into the spreadsheet. I just collected them, lined them up on my desk in the spare bedroom, a neat row of evidence I didn't know how to interpret. 15 receipts, 15 Fridays, 15 identical transactions. I tried to remember the last time Michael had taken me to dinner. Really taken me, not just grabbed takeout on a weeknight. It had been months, maybe longer. When I suggested it once, he'd said he was tired of restaurants, that he ate out too much for work, that he'd rather stay home with me. I'd felt loved when he said that, like I was the refuge he needed. Now the memory felt different. Now it felt like an excuse. The woman I became in those weeks is not someone I recognize anymore. I was careful, I was methodical. I told myself I was being rational, that I just needed to understand. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what I'd find, afraid of what I'd lose. I started tracking his location through our shared phone plan. I told myself it was for safety, that I just wanted to know he was okay. But really, I wanted to know where he was. And every Friday, his phone pinged from the same area, the neighborhood near the 3rd Lombardi's, the one across town by the park. Drove there one Saturday afternoon, told Michael I was meeting a friend for coffee. The restaurant was small, tucked between a dry cleaner and a bookstore. Red awning, narrow windows, white fairy lights strung across the entrance. It looked romantic, intimate, the kind of place you'd take someone you wanted to impress. I sat in my car across the street and stared at it. I imagined Michael inside, sitting at a table by the window. I imagined him laughing, leaning forward, his hand reaching across the table. I imagined someone else smiling back at him, someone who wasn't me. I drove home and threw up in the driveway. The confrontation happened on a Thursday, not a Friday. I think that's important. It wasn't planned, it wasn't calculated, it just happened. The way a glass falls from a counter. One moment it's steady, the next it's shattered on the floor. Michael was packing his laptop bag for the next day. I was folding laundry in the bedroom. He asked me something about the weekend, whether I wanted to go hiking or stay in. I don't remember what I said. I just remember watching him zip the bag closed, watching him check his phone, watching him exist in our life like nothing was wrong. And I couldn't hold it anymore. Who is she? He froze. His hand was still on the phone. He didn't turn around. What? Who is she? Not a question, a statement. I'd been practicing it in my head for weeks, and now that it was out, it sounded flat. Too calm, like I was asking about the weather. He turned slowly, his face was unreadable. What are you talking about? I crossed the room, pulled the folder of receipts from my nightstand drawer, dropped it on the bed between us. They spilled out, a cascade of identical white slips, all stamped with the same name, the same amount, the same time. Lombardi's, I said. Every Friday, for 4 months. You come home and tell me you worked late, but you were there, with someone. He stared at the receipts, his jaw tightened. It's not what you think, that's what they always say. In movies, in books, in every story about betrayal. It's not what you think, as if thinking were the problem, as if the evidence scattered across our bed were somehow a misunderstanding. Then tell me what it is. He sat down, ran his hands through his hair. For a long time, he didn't say anything. The silence stretched so thin I thought it might snap. Her name is Claire. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because suddenly I was on the floor, my back against the wall, my knees pulled to my chest. Michael was still on the bed, still looking at the receipts like they might rearrange themselves into something more forgivable. She's a colleague, he said. We've been working on a project together. The client dinners, they were real at first, but then it was just us, just talking. It wasn't what? It wasn't physical. We didn't, but you wanted to. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Every Friday, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. You sat across from her every Friday. You ordered food. You talked. You laughed. You paid $87 for the privilege. And then you came home and kissed me and told me you loved me. I do love you. Don't. He flinched. Don't tell me you love me when you've been lying to me for 4 months. Don't tell me you love me when you chose her every week. Don't tell me you love me when I had to find out from a fucking receipt. I'd never heard myself sound like that. Sharp, cold, like something inside me had calcified into stone. It's over, he said. I ended it. 2 weeks ago. I was going to tell you, 2 weeks ago. I laughed. It came out bitter, broken. You mean after the last receipt, the one from last Friday? He looked away. Oh my God, I said. You're still lying. I'm not. You are. You're lying right now. You're lying because you got caught and you don't know how to stop. He put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. For a moment, I thought he was crying. But when he looked up, his eyes were dry. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth. I just did. No, you told me a version of the truth, a version where you didn't do anything wrong, where it was just dinners, just talking, just a mistake you were about to fix. I want the real truth, the one where you tell me how long you've been unhappy, the one where you tell me if you kissed her, if you touched her, if you told her things you never told me. He was quiet. Michael. Once, he whispered. I kissed her once, in the parking lot. After the last dinner, the room tilted. I pressed my palms against the floor, tried to steady myself. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, my ears, my fingertips. Everything was too loud and too quiet at the same time. Did you tell her you loved her? No. But you wanted to. He nodded. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, like I'd been sitting too long. I walked to the window, looked out at the street. A neighbor was mowing their lawn. A kid was riding a bike in circles on the sidewalk. The world was still spinning, still moving, like nothing had changed. I need you to leave, I said. What? I need you to pack a bag and leave tonight. We can fix this. No. I turned to face him. We can't. Not right now, maybe not ever, but I can't look at you right now. I can't be in this room with you. So please, just go. He stood slowly, pulled a duffel bag from the closet, started filling it with clothes, toiletries, the things he'd need for a few days. He moved carefully, like he was afraid to make noise, afraid to shatter the fragile silence that had settled between us. When he was done, he stood in the doorway. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't respond. He left the keys in the ceramic bowl. I heard the door close, heard his car start, heard the sound fade into the distance. And then I was alone. The house felt larger after he left. Sounds traveled differently, echoed in ways they hadn't before. I'd walk from room to room and hear my own footsteps following me, soft thuds against hardwood that seemed too loud, too present. I started leaving the television on just for the noise, just to fill the space. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my mother, not my sister, not my best friend from college who texted me every few days with memes and recipes. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain that your marriage fractured because you were trying to save money? Because you organized receipts and found a pattern? It felt absurd. It felt inevitable. I took a week off work, told my principal I had the flu, spent the days rearranging the house, moving furniture, washing curtains, throwing out anything that reminded me of him. The ceramic bowl went into a box in the garage. His coffee mug, the one with the chipped handle he refused to replace, went into the same box. I couldn't throw them away, but I couldn't look at them either. At night, I'd sit at the kitchen table with the receipts spread in front of me, trying to piece together a timeline I'd missed while living it. I searched for the first crack, the first sign that something was breaking. But there was nothing. No fight, no distance, no moment I could point to and say, that's when it started. Maybe that was the worst part, that it had been so easy for him to slip away, that our life together had been steady enough, comfortable enough, that I hadn't noticed him building another one beside it. Michael stayed at his brother's place. We texted occasionally, logistics, bills, the mail that still came addressed to both of us. He asked if we could talk. I said no. He asked if I'd see a counselor with him. I said I'd think about it. I didn't think about it. 2 months passed. Summer turned the house into a greenhouse, the air thick and still even with the windows open. I stopped using the lavender detergent, started buying the cheap kind again, the kind that smelled like nothing at all. One evening I drove to Lombardi's. I didn't plan to. I was just driving, windows down, music low, and suddenly I was there, parked across the street. It was a Friday, 8:30 p.m. I watched couples walk in, watched them settle at tables by the window. I tried to imagine Michael there, tried to see him the way she must have seen him, charming, attentive, fully present, a version of him I thought I knew but maybe never did. A woman came out, alone, adjusting her purse on her shoulder. Mid-30s, dark hair, wearing a dress I might have owned. I wondered if it was her, Claire. If she was leaving another dinner, another Friday routine, if she was going home to someone who didn't know. I drove home. I didn't go back. Michael asked to come over in September. I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of carrying the weight alone. Maybe I needed to see him in the space he'd left behind, to understand if the absence was better than the presence. He looked thinner. His shirt hung differently on his shoulders. He stood in the entryway like a guest, like he'd forgotten how to exist in his own home. "How are you?" he asked. I don't know. We sat in the living room. The couch felt too small for both of us. He kept his hands in his lap, fingers laced together, knuckles white. "I ended it," he said. "For real this time. I haven't seen her since that night, since the receipts." "Okay. I'm in therapy, trying to figure out why I did it." "Have you?" He shook his head. "It's complicated. I was lonely, I think. We were lonely, both of us. We stopped talking, really talking, and I didn't know how to fix it, so I just found someone who made me feel less alone." "So it's my fault?" "No, God, no. That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying I was a coward. I'm saying I hurt you because I was too afraid to tell you I was hurting. I'm saying I don't know if I deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway." I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I'd married, the man I'd built a life with, the man who'd kissed someone else in a parking lot because he felt lonely. I tried to find anger, but all I felt was tired. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. I know. I don't know if I want to. I know. We sat in silence. The clock on the wall ticked forward. Outside, the streetlights came on, casting long shadows through the windows. Did you love her? I asked. He thought about it. That hurt more than anything, that he had to think about it. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe. Maybe I loved the idea of her, the way she looked at me, the way I felt when we talked, but it wasn't real. It wasn't us. There is no us anymore, I said. There's you, and there's me, and there's this thing we built that you broke. I know. I don't know how to put it back together. I don't either, but I want to try. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to tell him to leave, to take his apologies and his therapy and his late-night guilt and go, but I didn't. Because the truth was more complicated than that. Because I was lonely too. Because the house was too big and too quiet, and some part of me still remembered what it felt like to be loved by him, even if that love had curdled into something unrecognizable. I need time, I said. Okay. I need you to be patient. I need you to understand that I may never feel the same way about you, that I may never trust you again. I understand. He left an hour later. I watched him walk to his car, watched him pause at the door, one hand on the handle, like he was deciding whether to come back. He didn't. It's been a year now. Michael and I are trying. That's the word we use. Trying. He moved back in 3 months ago. We sleep in the same bed, but on opposite sides, a careful distance maintained even in sleep. We go to counseling every Tuesday evening, sit on a beige couch in an office that smells like eucalyptus, and talk about communication, about boundaries, about the slow work of rebuilding trust. Some days are easier than others. Some days I look at him and remember the man who came home on Fridays, who kissed my forehead and asked about my day. Other days I look at him and see a stranger, someone who lied with such ease that I wonder what else I don't know. I still have the receipts. They're in a drawer in the spare bedroom, tucked beneath old tax returns and expired warranties. I don't look at them anymore, but I know they're there. A record of something broken, evidence that can never be destroyed because it's already done its damage. Michael doesn't go to Lombardi's anymore. He doesn't work late on Fridays. He comes home by 6, helps with dinner, sits beside me on the couch. He tries so hard to be present, to be the husband he should have been all along. And I try to let him. I try to accept the man he's become instead of mourning the man I thought he was. But some nights, when the house is dark and he's asleep beside me, I lie awake and think about the version of our life where I never saved those receipts, where I never organized the numbers, never noticed the pattern, never drove to that restaurant and imagined him with someone else. In that version, maybe we'd still be living the lie. Maybe I'd still be folding laundry on Sunday afternoons, breathing in lavender, believing we were happy. I don't know if that version would have been better or worse. I just know it would have been different. People ask me sometimes if I've forgiven him. Friends who know, family members who watch us carefully at gatherings, searching for cracks. I don't know how to answer. Forgiveness feels like a destination, a place you arrive at and plant a flag. But I don't think I've arrived anywhere. I think I'm still walking through the wreckage, still trying to decide what's worth salvaging and what needs to be left behind. What I do know is this: love doesn't vanish when trust breaks. It just changes shape. It becomes something quieter, more cautious, scarred in places it was once smooth. It becomes a choice you make every morning, to stay, to try, to believe that people can be more than their worst mistakes. I don't know if we'll make it. I don't know if the foundation we're building now is strong enough to hold the weight of what we've lost. But I know that I'm here, that he's here, that we're both trying to find our way back to something that might not exist anymore. And maybe that's enough, or maybe it isn't. But it's real, and that's more than I can say about the life we had before. Retry,